questions. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the online course development process. Courage did a good job of describing theirs, and thank the e-learning center director for joining us. You can weigh in on this as well. I have a poll question to start, which is, does your institution have an online course development process? Is there some formal document or some description that you use to guide the professors and your staff? I'll give you a minute to answer that. To early voting looks like a pretty good balance here. Roughly 43% have one and 43% are working on it, and just 14% doesn't. So this is a good opportunity. It sounds like the timing is right here. Okay, anyone else want to vote? We've got 8 votes in. I think I'll end the poll there. So the timing is right to talk about this. You've got roughly 50% have something and 50% don't. I want to give you one example of an online course development process. This is not the only way to do it, but there are a number of options that you can discuss with your teams. First, I want to mention the ADDIE model, because this is really the godfather of the online instructional development process. If you haven't heard of ADDIE before, there's a link here at the bottom, and we'll share this with you through the chat. It's a great starting place to understand how to organize everything from analysis of your course through evaluation of how successful it was. And what I want to talk about today is what I think of as a modified ADDIE. That's an ASU version of that. So as you develop your modified version of the ASU or the ADDIE model, you'll be able to put together something that works for your teams. I'm going to go through each of these stages. You can see here there are 6 stages in the ASU model, starting with course pre-planning and ending with course revisions. What I'll do is walk you through each one and then give you the documents at the end that you can refer to. I always encourage people to steal my stuff. So when we get to the end of this, if you want to make a copy of the Google Doc that we share with you and then change it based on your needs, that's really the best case scenario. So course pre-planning is typically a 2-week process to make sure everyone's ready, willing, and able to teach online. You're going to have orientation meetings with your instructional designers. As you have personally experienced, we have a number of orientation activities, from the original meetings through the master classes to one-on-one training for the faculty. We also have some documentation faculty build on around their expectations for a course. What are their teaching values? All of these components get discussed as part of the pre-planning so that the professors understand what they're getting themselves into. There's nothing worse than a professor starting this process and then becoming demoralized, because there's a lot of work to be done. So as you think about pre-planning, it's really the opportunity to explain the whole process to the professor. Then we get into the actual design. And the course design typically takes around 8 weeks at Arizona State. That includes a kickoff meeting with both the instructional designer and quality assurance manager. We have someone who focuses on academic integrity and quality assurance. We've got definition of learning objectives. That's really the first step, syllabus development, and strategies and tactics for academic integrity. This is what Courage was talking about when he was mentioning the transition or transformation of a face-to-face course into an online course. All of these things have to be planned out and converted. So learning materials, media and technology, access for someone who might have a handicap or needs additional assistance with reading or viewing the information online. Then you actually get into the build process. This is something that typically takes around 12 weeks. Looking at this as the heart of the effort, you have to take all of your preparation and put it into the LMS. So if you don't have a good LMS, then you have to talk with your technology operational team and get that in place. Hopefully you've all now at this point developed an LMS infrastructure, but if you start to load that material in, videotaping the lectures, as Courage mentioned, they're making a massive expansion of videotaping capability. We've talked about that already as a technical infrastructure, but you also have the human staff that you need to develop so that they know how to create the videos and manage the videos, edit the videos for the professors, all of those things. If you don't have a lot of money for that, we still have the capability now to record videos on a phone or on a personal device. So if you don't have tens of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to invest in your video infrastructure, you can create low-cost, high-impact options, just as a reminder. Then you're loading all those materials, integrating any third-party software. If you're using a, let's say, a discussion board that's outside of your LMS, or you're using an assessment system that's not in your LMS, you can integrate those at this point. Formative and summative assessments have to be created in that infrastructure. And any discussion prompts, if you've got a master plan for your discussion throughout your course term, you have to set those up in advance to reduce the work during the course. And then finally, you're into a review and revision process. This may seem very overwhelming right now. I'm going very quickly, but once you see the documentation, you'll be able to digest it more and begin to customize it for your needs. Finally, we're into the course finalization process. This is 2 weeks where we do quality assurance checks. We need to make sure everything is ready 2 weeks before the start of the course. We don't want the faculty members panicking the day before the start of the course because a technology is not working or a piece of content wasn't loaded. So we try to set a deadline at least 2 weeks before. We encourage faculty to work collegially, ask their colleagues to review their course, provide feedback. We also have professional staff that do that. We have something called a course self-study, where the faculty members submit their information and then the staff do a review of the final course design just to make sure everything works properly. We make any final edits to the course shell, update that with all the due dates. If there's an assignment structure and you have to have a due date for every one of your assignments, that needs to be set up. And then the last step here is really planning your communication strategy. How are you going to engage with students? Are you going to make a welcome video? Are you going to ask them to make a welcome video? Are you going to ask them to post on the discussion board the first day some information about their experience and their interests and objectives for the course? And then once we're ready to go, we are launched and we are continuously monitoring that. So the review of the teaching values that the professor did in the pre-planning phase comes back into play, make sure that the course design and delivery is consistent with the values of the professor. We want an engaging welcome message, as I mentioned. We want to be able to contact students from a variety of different perspectives. Does every student have an email? Are they able to view the video updates? All of the other things that you expect them to do as part of an online course. Can they actively participate in the online discussion threads? That's both the professor and the student. We want the professors to have a presence online. We don't want the professor to simply set up a course and then not engage with the students. Really, the term instructor presence is a critical part of the success factor for a course. And when you're doing faculty development, it's important to remind them that instructor presence is a critical factor. We want the professors to demonstrate their passion and enthusiasm as they learn what the students are interested in. They should be adding additional material to the course. It's not a static entity, it's a living course. So we want them to continuously do that, monitoring and reaching out to students. If you can identify a student who hasn't been engaged for a week, hasn't used the discussion board, hasn't submitted an assignment, you have to be proactive as an instructor. And we use now a new person called a success coach to help the professor. Now, I know you probably don't have the resources to have success coaches yet, but as part of our learning process at Arizona State, we have developed an understanding of being proactive towards monitoring and contacting students. And then we want to document this process. So professors should be thinking about what would they do better next time. Keep a running list. Maybe it's a Google Doc or a Word doc that they can use to reference for the next version of the course. Once the course is done, there's a continuous improvement process. Anything that they've learned along the way needs to go into the revision for the next course. They would take a copy of their existing course and modify that for the next version. We want to do an end of term review of any student evaluations. If your university uses those, you want to be able to collect that feedback in an organized way so that the professors can integrate that into the next version. We encourage the professors to talk to their peers about feedback. If they're also teaching online, they may have insights into overcoming frustrations or challenges in the process. We want them to collaborate with their instructional designer. That's the partnership that really matters. And the question that Joseph had about how Courage and the KNUST team was able to create so many courses, it's that close relationship between instructional designers, technologists, and professors that really defines the successful organization. So it's not just building capacity with a professor, it's building capacity with your staff as well. And then implement those priority improvements for the next time around. Make a copy and then do the course revisions in that version. So this whole process can take as long as 24 weeks. So think about that right now. If you want to launch a course in August, you should be already working with the professor right now. You should be doing orientation. You should be in the course pre-planning stage. As you think about your goals for the e-learning initiative and for your institution, you have to start planning in these long cycles. You might be working with dozens of faculty members at the same time, or even hundreds as KNUST is. Giving you scale requires you to have these kinds of plans in place. So I'm going to give you access to these 3 different docs here. You'll be able to go in and review them. And as I mentioned, you can make a copy and use it as your own version, and then you can modify it. This is much more detailed than my brief overview that I just did for you. It's got additional links embedded as well. So you'll find more documentation about the ASU Faculty Center and other things that might be valuable. So I want to encourage you to continuously improve your process and your infrastructure as part of this. And at this point, I'll take questions. We've got a few minutes here. I notice there's a lot of activity in the chat, so let me see if we can answer some of these questions. David, go ahead.
Del? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Del, for that elaborative presentation, and especially touching on the issue of a DM model, and even for providing resources that we can be able to go and learning more about the same presentation. Now, from my analysis, and we have already confirmed with this, it will take almost 24 weeks to complete one course, which will be done by both the faculty, the instructors, the instructional designer, and maybe multimedia specialists together as a team. My question on this is, you know, faculties are teaching staff. Every semester they teach, they assess board thesis, they do examinations. That's a workload, Mr. Dell. Does this, is it considered as a workload on its own, or how do you balance between a faculty who is teaching courses and at the same time there is development of the course? Yeah. That's one.
Good
Number
question.
two, okay, number two, it's about ownership of the course. We've had cases of professors complain that I need to own this course. So that any other time is being offered, you must acknowledge that Professor Dell was the one developing this course and he needs to be compensated for. Maybe just need to comment on those two issues that I've just mentioned. Thank you.
Yes. Regarding faculty workload, we have two models in the United States that have been successful. One is what we call course release. For example, if a faculty member typically teaches 3 courses in one term, they may only have to teach 2 courses, but they have to develop their online version of the 3rd course so that they have the time, and that's a really critical variable. The other model we have is the payment model, which is to say we give them additional salary and that covers the additional workload. So you have to decide what works for your culture in your institution. If you don't have money, you may be able to do course release, but there is some cost to that as well, because you'll have to have somebody help teach the course that that teacher is not teaching while they're developing their online course. Does that help?
Very helpful, Dale. Very, very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And if you heard Phil Regier, the first workshop he did, he talked about that at some length. We pay our faculty members approximately $5,000 of additional income to build a course. I know that your local costs will be different, but just to give you a perspective on what we spend. The second question you had was related to, I forgot now.
Ownership.
Ownership. Oh,
yes.
Huge issue. We have established a policy that the course materials developed on university time, when you're getting paid your salary, belong to the university. That policy was a long time in developing. It wasn't something that you can do overnight, but the faculty finally agreed that if we paid them either through course release or through extra salary, then the materials belong to the university. And that went to court, and the judge agreed that the university owns the course. And the way we've adjusted that policy a little bit is if a faculty member changes university, for example, they move from USIU to another university, they can take their version of the course and use it somewhere else. So they still have access to that intellectual property, but the university retains the version also. So that's the way we worked out the shared property.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. I see
very
there's a question here from Eugene, and then there's a raised hand. So let me answer Eugene's first. The time estimate is based on 5 days, 8 hours. So yes, it's a typical work week in terms of estimating the time to development, Eugene. There was a raised hand and I missed who that was. Would you like to just jump in now?
It's me. I just wanted to also add that, yes, at Kenya University, we incentivize staff who help transform and go through this online course development process for us. The Institute of Distance Learning normally motivates them with some allowance for helping develop the courses. So it's also a factor and a driver in getting them to commit and then try and develop the courses.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I see some other questions here. Let me look at these. Oh, I see Courage says also they have a quality assurance and planning office. So that's good. So there's also some other offices in the university that you can collaborate with that may not be directly related to e-learning, but could offer services to support you. I think we have to be very creative now to make sure we're providing all of these services.